Alrighty, good evening, guys. We're getting to micro chapter 32 tonight, and we shall see how it goes. Looking good, though. Good bit of fun. And we'll do a quick stream test. Yeah, see where we left off as well. We'll read in just a moment here. See Wi-Fi for this. Tricky Wi-Fi. Okay, it's coming up right now. We're good. The little audio test. 3, 2, 1. Targaryen. The little audio test. 3, 2, 1. Targaryen. And we are good to go. We left off. He couldn't control the predators. What he could control was Tantalus' base. Sitting in the communications room, Drake got out his encrypted corporate phone and called Don McKeel. The hexapod is getting close. That is where we left off. Good fun last night with Grim, as well as Carissa. Thanks to a couple lurkers as well. Diablo 3 and such. Main show will return tomorrow night. Likely, at some point in the afternoon, we shall see. But then we shall consolidate things for Saturday especially. Sub-Saturday, but we'll be good. Friday time as well. Good night. Should I bring your tablet back afterwards?
No, just leave it.
Okay, leave it. Alright, see you in the morning.
Okay, good night.
Night. And that brings us to chapter 32, Tantalus Cliffs, 31st of October. Officially Halloween. Took long enough to get to Halloween, wasn't it? 31st of Halloween, 31st of October, 9:45 a.m. The truck climbed up over a lip of rock and emerged into a pocket of mossy ground. A small pond gleamed, and a miniature waterfall dribbled into the pond. As the drops landed in the water, they made the water shimmer with prismatic flashes. Rick, Karen, and Erica climbed down from the truck. They stood by the pool, gazing into it. It was a crystal clear, with a mirror-like surface. "We're so dirty," Erica said. "I could use a swim," Karen said. They saw their reflections in the water. They were tired-looking and sweaty, and their clothing had become ragged and grimy. Karen knelt and touched the water. Her finger dented the water but didn't break it. She was touching the meniscus, the rubbery surface of the water. She pushed against the meniscus, putting her weight into it, and her hand broke through the surface. "It's so tempting," she said. "Don't do it. You'll be killed," Danny said from the truck. "There's nothing dangerous here, Danny," Karen said. Rick wasn't so sure. He took the harpoon and probed it around in the pool, jabbing it into the bottom and stirring the water. If any nasty creature lived in the pool, he hoped the disturbance would lure it out. The water flickered with single-celled organisms drifting and corkscrewing. But none of these little creatures seemed dangerous. The pool was small and shallow enough that they could see all of it. Nothing seemed threatening. "I'm going for a swim," Erica said. "I'm not," Danny said. Rick and Karen glanced at each other. Erica went off behind a clump of moss and returned naked. "Is there a problem?" she said to the others, while Danny stared. "We're all biologists here." She stepped onto the surface of the pool. The water dimpled under her toes, but it supported her weight, didn't break. She pressed down harder, and suddenly she broke through and went in up to her neck. She waded over to the waterfall and stood under it. The droplets tumbled down, bursting on her head and making her gasp. "It's magnificent. Come in." Karen began to take off her clothes in a matter-of-fact way. Rick Hutter wasn't sure what to do. He felt embarrassed to be looking at Karen while she undressed, More embarrassed to be swimming with her and Erica naked, he got his clothes off fast and jumped into the water. "Welcome to Eden," Erica said. "A dangerous Eden." Rick ducked down and began scrubbing his head. As Karen explored the pool, she saw it was like a fish tank full of living things. But they weren't fish. They were single-celled organisms. The creature spun and darted and drifted. A torpedo-shaped creature swam up against her. It was a paramecium, a pond water animal, a protozoan consisting of a single cell. The paramecium was covered with rippling hairs that propelled the creature through the water. It began bumping along Karen's arm, tickling her skin. She cupped her hands and picked up the paramecium, holding it in a handful of water. She could feel the hairs beating on her palms, and the cells squirmed. It reminded her of a cat that didn't like being held. "I won't hurt you," she said to the cell, stroking it gently with a fingertip. As she touched the hairs, they reacted by reversing direction, beating against her finger. It was like stroking velvet that fought back. "Why am I talking to a cell?" Karen thought. "That's pretty silly. A cell is a machine," she told herself. "It's just a clockwork of proteins inside a water-filled bag." And yet, she couldn't help feeling that the cell was also a small being, full of its own purposes and desires. A cell wasn't intelligent the way a human is, of course. A cell couldn't imagine galaxies or compose a symphony, yet it was a sophisticated biological system, perfectly adapted to survive in this environment, and bent on making copies of itself, as many as possible. "Good luck," she said out loud, opening her hands and letting the cell go free. She watched it hurry away, corkscrewing as it swam. She said to Rick, "We're not so different from those protozoa." "I don't see the resemblance," Rick said. "A person is a protozoan on the day the person is conceived. As the biologist John Tyler Bonner likes to say, a human being is a single-celled organism with a complicated fruiting body." Rick grinned. "The fruiting body is the best part." "Crude," Karen remarked. Erica smirked at him. A shadow crossed the pool, and a scream echoed above. Instinctively, they ducked their heads under the water. When they came up, Rick looked around and said, "Birds." "What kind?" Karen said. "No idea. They're gone anyway." They washed their clothes in the pool, rinsing the dust and mud out. Afterward, they spread their clothes to dry and sunbathed for a little while on the moss. The clothes dried quickly. "We need to get going," Rick Hutter said, buttoning his shirt. Just then, the distant cries grew louder, and dark shapes flashed through the air above them. The humans leaped to their feet. A flock of birds was cruising along the cliffs, landing and taking off. The birds were foraging. Their cries shattered the air. A bird landed before them. It was enormous, with shiny black feathers, a yellow bill, and an alert gaze. It hopped around, investigating the spot, and screamed, a raspy, echoing cry. And then suddenly it took off. More birds arrived overhead, and they began circling, inspecting the scene and landing in trees that clung to the cliff face. The humans became aware of many eyes watching them. The cries of the birds surrounded the pool. Rick dashed for the truck, grabbed the gas rifle. They're minas," he shouted. "Get cover." Minas were carnivores. Danny had tumbled out of the truck, and he cowered underneath it. Karen had thrown herself down behind a rock, while Erica wedged herself down into clumps of moss. Rick knelt in the open, holding the gas rifle, watching the black shapes as they swept past the cliff, their cries streaming in the wind. The birds saw him. They had no fear of something so small. A myna cruised in and landed, and hopped across the ground toward him. He fired at the bird. The gun erupted with a hiss, kicking him backward, but at that instant the myna leaped into the air and soared away, downwind. He had missed. He reloaded frantically, slamming another pin into the chamber. The gun was a bolt-action rifle. It fired one projectile at a time. He thought there must be 20 or 30 of them, anyway. They twirled around the cliffs, their cries deafening. They hunt in packs, Rick said. Another myna landed. He pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. Shit. A jam. He frantically worked the bolt. The bird took one hop toward him and cocked an eye at him. Then it pecked at him and grabbed the gun. It was a shiny object. It had attracted the bird's eye. The myna slammed the gun against a rock, crumpling it, and letting out a cry that seemed to make the ground shake. Rick, meanwhile, had thrown himself flat and was crawling for the harpoon, which lay near the pool. The myna turned its attention to Erica, who cowered in the moss. She crouched, staring up at the bird, and suddenly lost her nerve. She broke and ran, ducking her head, whimpering. "Don't, Erica," Rick shouted at her. Erica's motion drew the bird's attention, and it hopped toward her. Karen King had been watching, and she made a sudden decision. She would sacrifice her life for Erica. She would give Erica a chance to live. It was good while it lasted, she thought, and stood up and ran towards the bird, waving her arms. "Hey, take me!" The bird swerved and pecked at Karen, but missed her, and she went sprawling. Erica had now jumped into the truck and was attempting to start it. Erica had gone into a full-blown panic. She didn't know what she was doing, other than trying to get away. Danny shouted at her, "Stop! I order you to stop!" Erica paid no attention. The truck lurched off and began climbing upward along the rocks, but it was very exposed. She was deserting the others. "Erica, turn around!" Karen screamed. Erica had gone past the point of hearing anybody. The truck, shiny and moving up the cliff, its 6 legs working, must have seemed like something tasty or interesting. A myna coasted in and plucked Erica out of the driver's seat. Packs and gear flew out of the truck as it tumbled down the cliff and bounced out into sheer air, and then it was gone. The myna landed, carrying Erica Mole in its beak. The bird slammed her several times against the cliff, whipping its head back and forth to kill its prey. The bird then took off, carrying the corpse. Immediately it got into a squabble with another myna, and they fought with each other over the remains of Erica Mole, and tore the body apart in midair. It wasn't over. Rick had gotten his hands on the harpoon, and he looked around. Where was Karen? She was lying on the ground, out in the open, underneath a myna. The bird, which had an unusual black streak on its bill, had landed and was staring down at Karen. It seemed to be trying to make up its mind about her. Was this thing edible? "Karen!" Rick shouted, and threw the harpoon at the bird. The harpoon, a thread of metal, went into the bird's feathers. Not very far. The bird shook itself, and the harpoon dropped on the ground. The bird studied Karen. She crouched, trying to make herself look small and unappetizing. "Over here!" Rick shouted, and started running, hoping to distract the bird. "No, Rick!" The myna cocked its eye at Karen when she spoke. It lunged for her and picked her up in its beak, threw its head back, and swallowed Karen in one gulp. Then it flew off, wings thundering. "Damn you!" Rick yelled at the myna. He waved the harpoon at the bird, which had become a fluttering speck in the distance. "Come back with her!" The flock in the trees chattered and roared. Now he couldn't tell which of them had eaten Karen. "Come back! Come back for a fair fight!" He jumped up and down, waving his arms, shaking the harpoon. He felt like crying. He would have done anything to get the myna bird to come back. The one with the streak on its bill. He couldn't give up now. But then he remembered something he'd learned about birds. A bird does not have a stomach. It has a crop. Crop. All right. Well, the next one, as you can imagine, is Karen inside the bird. Edge of Tantalus, chapter 33. We could get to it now, but in the interest of efficiency for the morning and battery and active chat, we'll look forward to that another time very soon. Yeah, could take the book home, but we'll keep it here for now. It's a good thing to do here. So, Soul Calibur and Gauntlet can always wait. Get to that soon. But anyway, good to see you. Thanks again, Grim, for the sub and cheer 100 last night. Good appreciation post for you tonight. And also get to the export, since busy night last night after the stream. I did not actually get to the export for Diablo 3, so we will get to that. I actually chatted with the raid instead of exporting, so was not able to get to that. We'll get to that tonight. We'll get to that right now. And I will see you soon tomorrow for some fantastic Friday fun. At some point, in some way, we shall see. Possibly micro, possibly other stuff. We will figure it out. Until then, eyes open and have a good night.